It says that as an organization, you value the output more than the person's feeling.
Yeah.
And either you decide that that's what you want to be. Hello and welcome to a father-daughter podcast, where we explore leadership, culture, and the future of business through the lens of tradition and innovation.
And you said, right, at some point you told me saying, act by your values. This is an example of actually acting by your values. If your
Correct.
value is not tolerating abusive language as an
Yeah.
example, and if that's something that's important, and everyone being treated with respect as one of your values,
Right.
then this is putting pen to paper. This is actually
Exactly.
acting in that manner.
Look, if we say we want to be a great place to work, and this constitutes this is what being a great place to work is all about.
Yeah.
For me, or for Gulzar, or the leaders in the team to say, we want to be a great place to work, but we'll treat you like crap.
Not okay.
Right? It's not okay. It just means that what you're saying is only lip service.
Yeah.
But your actions don't align with your words, and that is where trust breaks down.
Yeah.
And that leads to an organization where it becomes a free for all.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting, and I know what we've done, at least in our customer-facing teams, and it's something I very strongly believe in, is we done a survey some time ago to understand, how leaders are viewed within the team, and whatever survey findings we had, we coached the leaders.
Right.
And what that's ended up doing is, I personally believe we've created a happier workforce. And in that, when you have happier people, especially in customer-facing roles, I think your customer experience also improves because you're happy when you're speaking to that customer, and
Right.
it shows. And today, when I think about it, the challenge of the role is so complex. Each role is so nuanced, no matter where you are.
Correct.
Whether you're on the construction site, you're navigating, drawing delivery, you're navigating approvals, you're making sure that you're aligned to all the approvals that are in place.
Correct.
You're making sure the contractor quality is delivering, your manpower shortages. The complexity of each role is so high that you need to be happy at work to be able to navigate those complexities.
Absolutely.
And so I think you're very right in saying that toxicity and that toxic leadership cannot come at the cost of you cannot come at the cost of performance, because they may perform, but everyone else may start underperforming in time.
You may get performance in the short run. By whipping somebody to deliver,
Yeah.
you may get the performance in the short run. But what is it doing for your organization in the long run? Now, there are certain organizations which function where let's say it's okay, where customer satisfaction is not a priority. Okay? Or you say, you know what, I want to sell. Some people usko chipka do. Doesn't matter if the guy's business will not succeed, you sell him
Yeah.
a shop. Okay? Our goal is just to make the sale. Now, if that is the way the leaders believe you should sell in an organization, and that's how people are selling, there's no toxicity in that.
Yeah.
There's no
That's
mismatch
okay.
in that. That's their value system.
And their value system and culture aligns.
And it's aligned, and some people are happy to perform in that kind of a culture.
Yeah.
That's the organization they should go to. So once they see that, that's the kind of culture in the organization, then that's the type of organization that they should choose to work in.
Yeah.
So you have an alignment of your personal style of working aligning with the organizational culture, and you'll just thrive that much better there.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. When we talk about organizational culture, in your view, who owns the responsibility of the organizational culture? Not the responsibility to set the culture, but to actually the responsibility to make sure that becomes the culture of the organization.
I think each person in the organization, because you can say what you want as a manager, you can say what you want as HR, and HR can't own the culture. HR is the facilitator. HR is responsible to ensure that there is alignment, but HR cannot be the only one responsible for the culture mandate of the organization. Because how is HR to know what is happening in a particular vertical? They can't be everywhere and they can't drive it. The manager has to drive it. So we'll be talking about the culture of ownership, And if I take a micro action, one of the things about a culture of ownership is when you're not delivering something on time to speak up and say, listen, I'm really sorry, I can't get it done on time. How is HR supposed to micromanage
Right.
and watch that happen, right?
Of course.
It's the leader's person, it's the person who has to say it, and it's the person who is receiving that information who also needs to speak up.
So then what is the role of, so one is how you act, right? But how do, very often in organizations, people at the junior level are told to suck it up, are told to deal with it, right? How do you get them to have a voice, to get them to speak up, so that if everybody is responsible for the culture change,
Yeah.
that they actually have a voice and can help to drive the change in the culture?
So I have two views on that. One is, like I said, HR is not responsible for the culture, but I think HR is the custodian of the culture.
Okay.
And therefore, what I believe needs to happen is each employee in the organization needs to have a comfort level or a relationship with HR.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, just informal connects. It's also the manager's responsibility, but sometimes if the culture, the contrast to the culture is happening because of the manager, the employee or the team member will not be able to speak up because they won't know where to go.
Right.
Whereas if you build a safe space for them through HR, they have a way of being able to speak up without any fear of consequence. And therefore, I think HR is responsible to protect. HR is responsible to guide and maneuver, but not actually responsible to drive.
So you said something interesting, right? And reading from that or translating from that, does the first thing that you need to have is a culture where there is no fear of speaking out,
Absolutely.
right? So if you start with creating the culture where it's okay to speak up,
Yeah.
right? It's okay to oppose, then that becomes the prerequisite
Yeah.
to arriving at any other culture. So that actually becomes the first step.
And that actually is driven by a fear of no repercussions.
No repercussions,
No
exactly.
repercussions. And I actually want to go a step back. You talked about people with, depending on the value, the culture of the organization shaped. So if and I'm not applying for a job, but if person A is applying for a job, how do they ensure that their values actually meet the organization's values? So you do interviews where the organization interviews. How should someone who's being interviewed actually interview the organization to ensure the values are a match? And do you think that's important?
I think that's such an important point, and people don't do that. It's really important. And I've actually had people come to me for an interview and said, I was sitting downstairs while I was waiting to come in and see you. I was observing how people were reacting. I was observing how people were talking to each other, right? And these are opportunities to actually understand the workplace. It's okay to ask questions.
You should.
You should talk to people who work in the organization. It's good. Look, we tell customers who are looking to buy a house, go and do a reference check with the developer.
Yeah.
Right? If you're looking to join a place to work, you should do a reference check. Because it may be really good for that person to work, it may not suit you.
Yeah.
And therefore, if employees start doing a better, more detailed ref check of the organization that they're looking to work with, from the point of view of what is it like to work in this organization, and will I like to work in this culture?
Yeah. You brought up the thing about asking the questions. I actually, when I interview, at the end of the interview, I've always told people saying, treat this as a conversation. It's not an interview. It's not one-sided. Right. It's as important that you see us as a fit. And if they say, I have no questions to ask you, I'll always look at that as, that's really strange. That's always a demerit for me, in fact.
Yeah.
I had a candidate who I got onto a Teams call with for an interview, and my video actually wasn't working. There was some tech issue, and she got onto the interview and she told me saying, if you don't mind, could you please switch on your interview? It's a nicer experience for me. I was like, I'm really sorry, I can't. Let me actually get on from my phone so that it works for you. And I hired her. I didn't ask her anything beyond that. I said, you know what, if you can speak up and within the first 3 minutes you have the courage to ask me something like that,
you're in.
You're in. Technically,
that's the profile
we'll
of
make
people
sure
who we want.
That's the kind of person you want, is someone who actually isn't scared to ask.
Right.
And wants to ask, because that just shows that you're okay with it. So
Yeah.
I think we can wrap up and look to wrap up around that.
Yeah. So before we do, I'll tell you something that I've done. I've actually started some interviews with saying, okay, start with your questions.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's thrown them off, but then they do come up with the questions. So anyway, that's just a personal.
Yeah, I think very helpful. And I think culture isn't built in moments which are moments of celebration. I think they're built in smaller moments like these, and they're built in moments of pressure. So you mentioned about how you do these interviews, right? And you mentioned about saying that you start with you ask the interviewee about to ask you questions. And in that, I wanted to ask you, you'd be honest, but do you truly believe that anyone who's the interviewer would actually be honest in their responses, or do you think they would sugarcoat it to say what the interviewee would want to hear?
So I think sometimes they might sugarcoat it, but I would advise to give the honest answer. You can put it politely. You can put it in a positive light. You can put a positive spin on it. But I think giving an honest answer is actually in the interest of the interviewer. Because if you manage to hire somebody under false pretenses,
They're not lasting.
right? They're not lasting. It's a lose-lose for in the long term.
Yeah,
You'll get a
absolutely.
short-term win. What sense does it make? You have to be honest. You have to be upfront. Now, you're not going to be obnoxious about how you respond.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to make it seem worse than it is. But yeah, you always have to be honest.
Yeah.
And that's truly the way to go.
Yeah, and I think we should wrap up with that. I think that's a very powerful takeaway as well. And I truly believe that culture isn't built in moments of celebration.
Yeah.
It's built in smaller moments like these, and it's built in moments of pressure. So thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.